welcome to Hardtalk India. For almost a month, water has been at the center of controversy. Day after day, it's been at the front pages, it's been in the headlines. But yet, have we really understood the full story? Have we come to appreciate the horrible implications that might lie behind it? Today, in her first full-length television interview after filming was stopped, those are two of the issues I shall raise with the director of the film, Deepa Mehta. It's been a terrible month, Deepa. Can you imagine having been through anything like this before?
It's been absolutely horrific. I mean, sometimes I feel I'm actually in the middle of Kafka's castle because I have all these imaginary enemies whose faces I can't see but who I can feel and who at every turn stop me from doing what I'm doing.
So are you now thinking of just throwing it in and chucking it up, or are you determined to carry on no matter what the odds?
Well, you know, it's tough. It's tough to reassemble a unit and go for it. But if anything, my resolve hasn't changed at all. I definitely will make water.
So one day water will be made. But
one day, very soon, water will be made.
But will it be made in Madhya Pradesh or Bengal as you had offers, or are you going to now look for a location in another country?
No, the film has to be made in India for more than one reason. But whether it's Madhya Pradesh, whether it's West Bengal, you know, it's more a creative decision now that I've got the political sort of okay from them. And, you know, our teams will scout the locations and find the right places and we'll make them there.
As you know, Ashok Singhal of the VHP has said the film will be made over his dead body. Uma Bharti says you and the crew will be stoned. Does that worry you?
It doesn't worry me as much as it saddens me. I mean, there's so many other things that I feel that they should be, as leaders of their respective parties, they should be paying attention to. Why worry about a film? What is it in a film that threatens them so much?
That, in a sense, is what I want to really try and find out from you. So let's go back to the beginning and try and work out what happened and how it happened. When did you submit your script to the Information and Broadcasting Ministry, and how long did they take before they gave you permission?
It was on the 6th month, yeah, June 1st, 1999, when I first submitted the script of water to the ministry.
When did clearance come?
I got a message from them on the phone in the beginning of December, and then I got a hard copy of the clearance. They'd said yes on the 6th of January.
So they had a clear 6 months to vet the script thoroughly?
Yes, and I'm sure they scrutinized it because, after all, I carried the baggage of fire with me, and for them to have done anything else but that would have not been very good.
So, in fact, the allegation raised by Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, a BJP General Secretary, that the script was cleared by a lowly clerk, you don't believe that?
I think that's such an unfair thing to say, you know, because surely in 6 months it traveled wherever it had to before I got the clearances, and I'm sure it traveled really high up.
And as you say, given the baggage that you carried because of fire and the controversy that surrounded that film, this time round the ministry would have been doubly careful. They'd have scrutinized it with a fine-tooth comb.
I'm sure they would have, because, you know, it's a big responsibility the ministry undertakes when it lets a foreign production come in. And it's not an easy thing to get their permission. I'm sure they scrutinized it.
Okay, when they scrutinized it, did they ask you to make changes, or was your script cleared exactly as you'd submitted it?
It was cleared without one cut.
Not a single cut?
Not a single cut.
And when you did get permission, were there conditions that were imposed, and did you accept those?
There are always conditions that are imposed whenever you want to, as a foreign crew, as if you want to come and film in India, and you have to give a written undertaking that you will comply by those conditions.
What sort of conditions are these?
One is that we have a liaison officer with us during the whole shoot. Every minute while the film is rolling, a liaison officer who's a representative of the government and of the ministry, who has a script that is being given to the ministry as his Bible, and he sits there while we're shooting to make sure that whatever we shoot is actually in the script.
Any other?
Oh yes, he has to sign off on the shooting of that day. That's the only way the rushes or the negative of the film can leave the country. It cannot leave without his signature.
So this is very important. Every 24 hours the liaison officer has to sign off on what you've done, and only then can you send the rushes out of the country.
Absolutely. You cannot clear customs unless you have the liaison officer's signatures on, you know, with the pieces of paper with the negative. And as well, what you have to take an undertaking on is that, you know, before you can show or distribute the film anywhere in the world outside India, it's mandatory that you show it to the Indian ambassador or high commissioner of that country, and only when he gives it his okay can the film be distributed legally in any part of the world.
So even outside India, you have to get clearance of the High Commissioner or the ambassador in the country before you can show the film?
Absolutely.
Okay, on that basis, you went to Benares and you made arrangements to start shooting the film. And for the first 5 weeks, nothing actually happened, all was fine. And then the trouble began. Looking back, what do you think actually lay behind the problem? What sparked it off?
You know, it was 5 weeks of welcome to Benares. You know, we are so happy that you are here, and nothing that I could do was, you know, was wrong, and everything was just hunky-dory. And then a lackey of the UP Minister of Tourism, Mr. Ashok Yadav's lackey, a gentleman, came up from Lucknow and said, okay, now if you really want to make your film, then you have to cast my friend's wife as one of the stars in the film, and maybe he can take care of looking after all the extras in the film, and perhaps you will think about giving me the distribution rights for UP for the film. At which point I got really upset and I said, listen, this is not what it's about, and please kindly get lost.
Can I interrupt? Who was this man? Can you name him?
Oh yes, his name is Rakesh Manjul.
And he's a lackey of the UP Tourism Minister, Ashok Yadav.
That's right.
When he said this, did you contact his boss, Mr. Yadav?
Absolutely. I was really upset because this is, I mean, I'm a filmmaker. This is ridiculous, you know. And you've got the permissions, and you feel so strengthened by the fact that the center's behind you and you're doing everything by the law. And this was decidedly underhand and not a game that I wanted to play at all. So I rang up Mr. Yadav and I told him that this is what, you know, Rakesh Manjul's doing, and Mr. Yadav's reaction was, it's terrible, you know, I'll keep him away from you. And
did he?
Yes, I never saw him again.
You never saw Rakesh again?
No.
But what happened to Mr. Yadav? Did Mr. Yadav step in and help and sort out the problem Rakesh had created?
Mr. Yadav just disappeared. I didn't speak to him till about 2 weeks ago. Now, during the trouble, there was no way I could contact him.
So right through the trouble which you now believe was created in a way by this story that you've told me, Mr. Ashok Yadav, the UP Tourism Minister, simply would not respond to your telephone calls?
No, none at all. I left many messages. I had his cell phone number and he was not available. But Mr. Manjul, before he left, told our location manager, Mr. Iqbal Kadwai, that I'll see how this film is made over my dead body because she has insulted me, quote unquote.
So you believe that your refusal to give in to his demands led to all the problems and protests that followed?
I think that, it definitely sowed the seeds of what was about to follow, because if for 5 weeks nobody had found anything offensive about my script or even said I was anti-Hindu or a Christian missionary, why overnight did this whole thing blow over?
Okay, the trouble first began, if I understand correctly, somewhere around the middle of January, when stories began to emerge in Benares that your film contained an illicit relationship between a Brahmin girl and a low-caste Dom Raja. Does it contain any such relationship?
There is no Dom Raja in the script, and nor is there a Brahmin widow.
So this is a complete fabrication?
Total fabrication. But, you know, when the murmurs started, you know, I started getting slightly apprehensive because, we had gone to get our permissions. We had our permissions from the district magistrate and from the state government. So we'd gone to the SSP to get our permissions for the walkie-talkies that were supposed to be coming in. And he said, listen, I have an internal memo from the DM that says that the filming of water is not going to be allowed. That's when I went to the DM and I said, what's up, Mr. Kumar? And
that's when he reported this story to you?
That's when he said to me that, that in fact what he said was, he said, I believe in total transparency, so I want to tell you that I was told categorically to deny you permission till a couple of things were cleared. One was that Mr. Ashok Yadav is saying that there's some irregularities with your crew, and number two is that I'm hearing that your script is about a Dom Raja, an untouchable, and his relationship with a Brahmin widow.
Okay, you clearly denied to me that there is any such relationship between a Brahmin widow and the Dom Raja. What about the fact that you just mentioned that the DM said Mr. Ashok Yadav, the UP minister whose lackey had been trying to lay down conditions, accused you of financial irregularities?
That's right. That's exactly what Mr. Alok Kumar
So
said.
now we have proof, in a sense, that Mr. Ashok Yadav was himself intervening as a minister through the DM to try and put a spoke in the filming.
Absolutely. That's exactly what the DM said.
Okay, let me take up some of the other so-called leaks of your script that have been in the press and which have aroused criticism, and I'll give you a chance to tell me whether they're true or not. It said that in your script there's an 8-year-old child widow called Chuya who gets gang raped, and that this somehow is in your script suggestive of how child widows are treated. Is there such an incident there?
Absolutely not. Chuya never, I mean, it's so preposterous. Chuya, you know, the whole thought about, it's out in a weekly magazine, and I thought, how sad. Because if Chuya's parents, or even the little girl who's playing Chuya, even reads that, how difficult it's going to be for her.
Can I ask
She
a
does
question?
not get gang raped.
Can I ask a question? She doesn't get gang raped. Does she get raped at all? Just a simple rape?
You never see it on screen. That's the point. You know, who reads the script, and what are the interpretations of it?
So this is a distortion that's been put in the press and an exaggeration as well.
It is so irresponsible, and it is very sad.
Okay, another element that's been so-called leaked to the press is that in your script you say that Brahmins and gods alone have the right to sleep with widows, and it's how they confer their blessings on them. Does the script say this?
You know, you can take anything out of context and make it sound, you know, conflagratory, I guess, is a good word at this point. No pun intended. But what really gets to me is what my script says is, yes, it does say God and Brahmins can sleep with any woman that they want to. And isme bhala aurton ka hi hota hai. And gods and Brahmins, that's what one of the big objections was. And those are the two words that, in fact, I took out as a gesture towards the people of Kashi, that if this was disturbing them, I changed it to men.
So this was an area where, in fact, you said if this is a cause of trouble, I will remove it.
Absolutely.
The papers have also said that in your script there is a section where you ridicule the purity of the Ganga by comparing it to an epidemic of smallpox, a plague of corruption, and you also compare it to the half-burnt bodies that float on the surface of the water.
You know, it's actually a lovely situation because our hero Narayan is talking to his friend who is a Serbic and a slightly anglicized character. And he looks, and he's looking at the skyline of Varanasi, and he says, what do you think that is about Benares that makes it so special? Is it its piety? Because I think it is. And Rabindra, his friend, laughs, and he says, yes, and of course the cholera epidemics and the half-burnt bodies, you know, people come here to wash their sins, they leave their sins behind and go away, quote unquote.
So in fact, the sentence is there, but its meaning is almost the opposite of what people are trying to suggest.
And Narayan says after that, he says, say whatever you will, I love this city. You know, so what happens then? But because of that, I said, okay, this was this was one of my 5 things that I said, okay, this is what's disturbing them. I'll remove the half-burned bodies. So now it says, you know, yes, of course, and he laughs about it and he says, yes, the cholera, people come and wash, you know, come here to wash their sins, and they leave their sins behind and go away, in fact, suggesting the purity of Ganga in a way.
Not the opposite. Okay, Deepa, you've made it clear that the leaks, so to speak, that we've read about in the newspapers are either concoctions or they're out of context or they're distortions. On the 3rd or 4th of February, after you'd come and got a second set of clearances from Arun Jaitley, the information minister, you went back to Benares and you read out your script to 2 very important people. You read it out to Veerbhadra Mishra, the Mahant of the Sankat Mochan temple, and you read out the script also to Shivji Upadhyay, the head of the Kashi Vidvat Parishad. What was their response?
I got this because, I mean, I went to read it to them, and it took us 6 hours because we read every sentence of the script, every line, every word to them. And in fact, I took the script and I put it in front of Mahanji and Upadhyayji, and I said, if you don't like the script or you think in any way it denigrates either Bharatiya Sanskriti or the Vidvas of Kashi or Kashi itself, I will not make the film.
And what did they say?
And I said this in front of 10 people. And they said, they were, I think, slightly stunned, but I really meant it. Because at that point it seemed irrelevant. Because if they represented the people of Kashi and they felt that in my script in some ways hurt the sentiments of the people of Kashi, then what's the point of making it?
And what was their verdict?
Mahanji said to me that he was deeply, deeply moved by the script. And in fact, he was crying when the child widow came into the House of Widows. And he said that काशी ने आपके साथ बहुत अन्याय किया है because आपकी script में कुछ नहीं है जो या विधवाओं के खिलाफ है.
So they passionately believe this movie should be made.
Absolutely.
Okay, when then, at the end of that week, we're now at the end of the first week of February, you got ready to start filming again. What happened?
So we had the permission, and now I had the permission of the central government, which I've always had. Then I had the permission of the DM, and I also had the permission of the people who represented the sentiments of the people of Kashi. And we couldn't film because we were told that day when we were about to leave for our shooting that there were thousands and 10,000s of people who were demonstrating against the film being made.
And were there so many people there?
We didn't see any.
Not a single soul?
We did not see any. We sent our people out to scout and say, you know, where are these people? And they said, you know, there are 12 people protesting, burning your effigy, Deepa.
Not
but
10,000?
that's 12.
So this entire claim that there were 10,000 people in the streets of Varanasi protesting against the filming was a concocted claim by the authorities?
Absolutely, because our scouts, who, you know, people who worked in our unit who are from Varanasi, went around in the areas that they were supposed to be protesting against us. Because we do sync sound. It's really quiet. You can hear a pin drop. We didn't hear one Deepa Murtabad or water Murtabad.
I have to put this to you that the authorities have publicly said, the Chief Minister has said that filming had to be stopped because there was a law and order problem. Reports that one man, Arun Pathak, attempted suicide. Doesn't that suggest that things could have gone out of control?
Absolutely. When we said we are not going to stop shooting because we can't hear any protesters. The police came back after we'd taken our first shot that day. They came back and they said a man has just committed suicide. He's just jumped into the Ganges, and a mob of thousands is coming to attack you. So you have to leave right now. I mean, I was just stunned. We all were really mortified by something like this happening. So we stopped the shooting. We called a halt and we stopped the shooting. We went back. The whole crew later that evening went to the DM's house and he said, give it to us in writing because you have to stop playing us like a ping pong ball.
And what happened?
And at that moment, the journalists from Varanasi, 3 of them came to us and said, you should know something. Ashok Pathak has been convicted 3 times for attempting suicide. He's a professional guy for hire who commits suicide for a living, you know, however die, you know.
Are you suggesting that he was put up to this as a way of stopping the filming?
All I know is that this man has done this 3 times for different causes, and this time he put a stone around his waist and jumped into Ganges 3 times. The first time he came out because there were no cameras there. The second time he came out because there was no television there. The third time he came out, he stayed there because, and you know, he was filmed, etc. And he was in ICU apparently, and the next day he was back home.
So you're suggesting that in fact this entire incident of a suicide was concocted by the authorities as a way of giving themselves grounds for stopping the filming?
Yes, I'm not suggesting it, I'm actually saying it. Because Alok Pathak sent a letter the day before to the DM saying, I am going to be committing suicide at such and such place at such and such time. Why didn't the police arrest him? I mean, why were we the victims?
So if they wanted to prevent the suicide, they could have arrested him.
Absolutely.
They used the suicide, in fact, to prevent the filming.
That's true.
Tell me this, your story, as you've told it, suggests that the central government gave permission for a film to happen, and Arun Jaitley reiterated that for a second time at the end of January. And yet when you began the filming, the state government concocted a law and order problem to prevent filming.
Absolutely right.
Why did they do that?
You know, I've been thinking about it, and I feel that perhaps it was a way of the state government showing their own muscle and saying, look, we are the protectors of culture and we are going to get rid of all the bad elements. And it was very visible. And the other thing I think that has something to do with it perhaps is because Mr. Singhal at that point had said, shoot, and had told the CM of UP that the shooting will take place over my dead body.
So in other words, they had to do this to save Singhal's face? That's what you're suggesting?
As well as make themselves look like heroes and the great protectors of Bharatiya Sanskriti
Let me put something else to you. The central government gave you permission to film in Varanasi. Are you also saying that after the trouble there began, they in a sense left you on their own? Or do you think they did enough to help you?
I think they did whatever they could. I didn't ever feel abandoned by Mr. Jaitley, because whenever I did want to talk to him, and I know he did, for a matter of fact, that he did speak to the CM about it and say, you know, I've given them permission, let them do it. That's when we'd get the permission.
So he stood behind you as much as he could have.
Absolutely.
You have no axe to grind with Arun Jaitley.
None at all.
Let me, in a sense, briefly play devil's advocate to you. Govindacharya, another General Secretary of the BJP, has said that it's not just the script that gives offence, it's the fact that you've given the movie the name Water, it's the fact that you've chosen Varanasi as the location, it's the fact that, in fact, the Vishwa Ashram is located at a spot sacred to Tulsidas. That all of this is cause for offence.
The title of my film, Water, has nothing to do with the Ganges. Water is a metaphor for life in my film. That's where the title comes from.
And what about the location, Varanasi?
Varanasi, because this is where people come to get liberation, Kashi Moksha.
And the choice of this ashram?
The choice of the ashram is a very special place where the Mahant, Veerbhadra Mishra, is, you know, that's his area. He has given his okay to the script. What's Mr. Govindacharya's problem?
What about the view that's also been expressed in the papers that you may have depicted the plight of Indian widows perfectly accurately, but your script goes further and suggests that this plight is somehow sanctified by the Hindu Shastras, and in so doing, you're not just wrong, you're offensive to those Shastras.
You know, it's, I keep on coming back to this, Karan. You know, I think that's a misconception, firstly. And secondly, you know, when Veerbhadra Mishra, the Mahant, has read the script, and he, for me, and for a lot of people who know anything about the Shastras, is a real authority on the Shastras, felt that there was nothing in my script that had taken advantage of or misinterpreted the Shastras. You know, I would rather believe him than somebody else.
One last thing, it's also been said, and again I'll quote Govindacharya, the BJP General Secretary, because he says it, that Deepa Mehta's track record and credentials were such, and her approach so arrogant, that she not only ignored the sentiments of people but chose to hurt them further. Did you go about this whole venture the wrong way?
I think I did everything I had to. I'm a filmmaker, I'm not a politician. I got the right permissions. I got the okay from the Ministry of the Home Affairs, INB, the DM, the state, the SSP. I did everything as a filmmaker that I had to.
But were you arrogant with the people that you met?
No, because, I mean, they don't know me. How do they know that I'm arrogant or not? Besides, I've heard that you're terribly arrogant, you know. How does one gauge that till you get to know somebody?
So they're branding you with a label to give you a bad name?
Well, perhaps Mr. Govindacharya thinks or misinterprets my sort of stubborn commitment to making of the film as arrogance.
Deepa Mehta, my last question. You've been accused of not being Indian. You've been accused of not understanding what you're filming. You've been accused of not caring about giving the country a bad name. Are you deeply misunderstood? Or have you got enemies who've decided that you're the victim of a conspiracy? Which of these two do you see yourself as being?
Well, you know, I was born in Amritsar. I grew up in Amritsar. I went to school in Dehradun. I was in Welm Girls for 7 years. I went to university in Lady Shri Ram College. I worked here at Junior Statesman for 1 year. I worked at the cinema workshop in Chandewala for 1 year. I always have thought of myself as an Indian. I carry a Canadian passport, but I never ever thought I would be put in a position where somebody would accuse me of not being Indian. I was really proud, I still am, of being an Indian. I think that I'm an easy target. I really am, you know, because if you're from outside, it's the whole NRI label, and it's also the label of Christian conspiracy.
So you're being picked upon?
I don't feel like a victim. I just feel perhaps I'm misunderstood.
Well, Deepa Mehta, let's hope that what you've said today, so openly, so candidly, helps clear some of that misunderstanding. Thank you very much
Thank you
for that interview.
Thank you.